It's about I gotta say, it's the stupidest thing in sports.
Being able to run as he shoots the moon to the fans here in Green Bay.
That is a disgusting act by Randy Moss.
This is not Detroit, man. This is the Super Bowl.
Hey.
Here we go. Goff from the touchdown.
This is BS Sports.
And away we go. And away we go on a crazy Tuesday. It was thunderstorming here in mid-Michigan early this morning. I thought it was summertime. I was about ready. I was like, oh yeah, we get to talk baseball. No, baseball is still in spring training. Tigers haven't made any moves since acquiring Gio Urshela, so there's really not much for me to talk about there. And there isn't really that many other major moves that were made. I guess Matt Chapman got signed. Oh, wow. Who would have thought that? But we do have a lot to talk about. We got a big show, okay? A lot of news that has broken in the past couple of days regarding NFL free agency. Obviously, the headliner is this new college football thing, these new rules that are going to be implemented. We're going to take a little stop at MSU college basketball because they only got a couple of games left and things are hold on, let's see.
This is bad. This is very,
Stephen
very
A.
bad.
That's right, Stephen A. I think this is very, very bad. Meanwhile, we also got to do a little NHL update. That's a little rundown. That's what we're going to talk about. I don't know what to tell you. That's where we're at. But we're obviously, we have to start with this, okay? So some college football has some changes coming, some new rules, some new stuff. I don't know how exactly to put this. Because it's kind of rules and then it's kind of like technology, but I'm going to start with the things that I don't have much of a problem with. We're going to start with the in-helmet communication. So basically, if you know anything about the Michigan scandal that had gone on this year, it was kind of a little bit of a talking point about how plays and formations and, audibles, how they were determined. And they used to use, at least up to, I guess, soon to be, signs where you had like a laughing emoji with a hot dog and Rocky Balboa and a picture of the Barack Obama. I don't know. You just had all these weird, signs, some of them literal, or you had like baseball where you had guys like, touching every single part, doing head, shoulders, knees, and toes on national television, essentially, to communicate to their quarterback, oh, actually, we're doing a flea flicker. And Michigan got in big trouble. Obviously, we're not going to rehash that, essentially, for figuring out what those signs were outside of games and basically having a list of them on a hard drive that was destroyed by a coach that got fired. I said we're not going to get back into it. But here I can't help myself. What can I say? But this new in-helmet communication would essentially null and void that. That sort of thing basically would be unable to happen because teams would instead be able to do what they do in the NFL, which is have a guy with a headset, either your defensive coordinator or your head coach, and obviously in college they have headsets. They would communicate that to the player. You know, they'd cover their mouth with the playbook, or they cover they could use any number. They could just cover it with their hand if they wanted to. And that would tell the quarterback what the play is. Quarterback would then relay that in the huddle, and you're ready and good to go. I think this is well needed. I think if we have this technology available to us, I really don't see why we wouldn't use it. Clearly, teams are not able to hold themselves accountable and not just sort of stealing signs in games that they may or may not have to play up to and including playoff. But I said I wasn't going to talk about it. I said I wasn't going to get involved. Anyways, it's a welcome change. It's actually one of the few positive changes that it seems to be happening in college football. All right. The next one is the 2-minute warning. Now, this one doesn't make any sense to me because they already changed the rule about the clock stopping after a first down. So it used to be before this year, every first down, the clock would stop for at least a little bit and would start to run again, depending on whether or not you got out of bounds, time of the game, use timeout, all that. And college never had a 2-minute warning. And I think part of the reason why it never had a 2-minute warning is because of this in-game reality where every single time you get a first down, the clock stops for at least a brief moment so you can, run down the field, hear the play, go from there. The 2-minute warning would just put you sort of back where you were before because they wanted to speed up the game. That's why they got rid of that clock stoppage to where the clock would only stop after a first down in like the final 2 minutes or the final 5 minutes. And now they're just going to have a 2-minute warning like they do in the NFL. And to me, again, this just takes away from college football offering its own thing, right? Like the whole appeal for college football, to me at least, is that it's not the NFL, right? Is that it's different. The play style is different. The fan bases are different. The games are different. Everything is different outside of the fact that they're both playing football. But even then, slightly different with the rules. And to implement a 2-minute warning when you just said you want to speed the game up, I really don't know where they're getting this idea. Like, I don't know anybody who is like, oh, you know what college needs? It needs a 2-minute warning. Yeah, that's what it needs. Like, no, people are more so talking about, things like transfer portal rules, NIL clarity, maybe to stop with all this conference realignment nonsense, stuff like that. An actual commissioner, clarity on all of these things. Like that, that's what we want. No, actually, college football says, you know what we need? We need a 2-minute warning. That's what we need. And speaking of just being completely blind to what people want, we are now entering a new era in college football. So I know you all enjoyed the 12-team playoff. I enjoyed it. It was a great time. Everybody enjoyed it. It was fantastic. Everyone was big fans. But no, actually, we're going to move on. We're going to go ahead and go to 14. And I just, you know what? Again, if we want this to just be the NFL, you have it. Because the NFL has a 14-team playoff. You have 7 seeds on both conferences, and now we're exactly at that when you go to 14. And why stop at 14? I was telling people, I was like, you know what? Why don't we just do March Madness to start the year? We'll call it December Madness. We'll just have, teams play, I don't know, like 5 games. However many games you play from August to December. And once December starts, we just do like a 68-team tournament. Single elimination, have like 1 million games on at once. It'd be a crazy, I'm not going to lie. That actually wouldn't be that. That would be actually pretty entertaining. However, we shouldn't do that because we know that's not what college football is. It's not what it has. It's not what it's built itself up to be. Like one of the things, and I know some people say like, oh, well, people say this about every change in college. It's like, well, yeah, because it's built up a popularity for the particular things that it was. And when you just keep changing it, sometimes arbitrarily, like this, going from a 4-team to a 12-team, which I supported, to now going to a 14-team. It's like, well, then why not just go to 16? Why not just go to 20? Why not go to 100? I don't know. We got over 100 teams. Let's do a 100-team playoff. Western Michigan gonna go on a run this year. We're gonna at this point, there's no limiting principle. And then the thing that really made me laugh, and it's not because I think it will happen, because I think it probably will happen, just given the way that these things go. It's just the nature of it. So apparently, and I think this goes with the 14-team playoff. I don't know if this is all set in stone at this point. I don't know that it totally is. I know there's been talks about it. So if this is totally set in stone at this point, fine. That's great. I'm super stoked about it, as you can tell. But apparently, the Big Ten and the SEC would like to guarantee that 3 teams from their respective conferences get a spot in the playoffs. And I just got to say, you know what? If I could guarantee that I just get, an extra $500,000 every year, yeah, I would support that. I would write on the issue of whether or not I should get $500,000 at the end of the year. I vote yes. What kind of what? Imagine the audacity. It's like, you know what? I think we should just have 3 of our teams just guarantee him. Yeah, I think that's fair. It's like, well, why? What if only one team is good, or what if only 2 teams are good? Why is there this guarantee? And you know what it all is stemming from? Well, for one, it's money, right? The Big Ten and the SEC are the 2 biggest conferences at this point in college football and in college sports at this point in general, and they're the biggest moneymakers. I mean, top brands in college football are either an SEC school or a Big Ten school, pretty much. You have a few exceptions, Florida State or Clemson or some of these other ACC or, other conference schools. But in general, especially in the world of college football, it's Big Ten and SEC country, and then everybody else. There's been, 2? I think just 2 non-Big Ten or or SEC national champions since the playoffs started, and that was Clemson twice, right, with Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. I just don't. How are they gonna It seems like this is just like I was saying before. It's just going towards what the NFL is. We're just gonna have 2 mega conferences. Eventually, the ACC is gonna become like the Pac-12, where it's going to all the moneymaker teams are going to leave. Florida State's probably going to leave. Clemson's probably going to leave. Heck, Miami might leave, and the Big 12, same deal. I mean, you already lost Texas and Oklahoma, right? Those teams are going to want to migrate wherever they want to go. You might see some of those guys going to the Big 10 or going to the SEC. And the Pac-12 is the Pac-2. So that sort of speaks for itself. And it's more and more becoming just 2 conferences, 14 plus team playoff. I wouldn't be surprised if we start bringing back divisions individually, because we're going to get to the point where the Big Ten is going to be 20 teams. I think it's 18 teams now, which is funny given the name is Big Ten. But if we get to 20 teams, if you get to that's bigger than the NFC. The NFC has 15 teams or something like that. Yeah, because hold on. Now I'm doing the math. Let's see. Lions, Packers, Vikings, Bears. So it's 4 teams per conference, or 4 teams per conference. 4 teams per division, and it's North, South, East, and West. So it's 16. 16 teams per. Thank you. Math, hard. So we're already talking about the Big Ten already has more teams per in their conference alone than the NFL does. And I know some people will reject and be like, well, stop comparing it to the NFL. College is totally different. Well, they seem to think that it's basically the NFL because they're moving in that direction, right? They're not focusing on the regionality, on the little schools, all these kind of fun things about college football, the bands, the fan bases, the student athlete aspect to it. They're not reaching into that. They're reaching into how can we make this make the most money? And the way that you make anything make the most money would be to emulate the biggest moneymaker in professional sports in America. That's the NFL. So, I mean, I don't, and the fact that they're playing the same game, just telling me that it's basically the same thing. And the problem is, unlike the NFL, you don't have a salary cap in college. You don't have, a general manager and a coach and an owner of team. You have team president, or you have not team presidents, you have school presidents. You have athletic directors who are not just focused on football or basketball or baseball or whatever your school is doing. And then your coach is basically your vice president of your president of ops, your GM, your obviously their head coach, and everything else. Like the head coach is the program, but it's sort of gotten to a point where it's going to become kind of too big to fail, to the point where, they're not really going to know how to govern any of it. And they already don't know how to govern it. And all these new rules, it's just like, this is just a joke. Like, this is just like, it's like you gave the kid the nuclear codes and you're surprised that he's bombing Taiwan. Poor Taiwan. That's not very nice. But like, nobody knows how to do that. Like, the schools are really only focused on making the money, right? So like, they're like, well, we would make more money in our TV deals if we had 3 teams from our conference every year make the playoffs. So we're going to make that be a guarantee, right? Like, in the same way, the networks are like, well, we make more money when there's more games. So a 14-team playoff makes more money than a 12-team playoff. And that also, and the schools are going to appreciate that too, because that means 2 more schools than would have prior make the playoffs. And some people are saying, this is ruining the regular season. And I understand that. The thing about it was, we had a system in college football. And I've talked about this before. We had a system called Bowl College Series, something like that. BCS. I think it's Bowl College Series. And it was basically fine. You had, if you got 6 wins, you'd play in a bowl game, and you would get selected for the bowl game. You didn't have a whole lot of leeway on how you got selected. Basically, the press, the media, whatever, there was a selection committee. They determine where you ended up getting slated. But you got to 6 wins. All right, we're going to play in a bowl game, and we could get a trophy, and we're going to be able to take it home with us. Look, we went to the Welch's Grape Juice Bowl, and we won the grape trophy. I don't know. And it's like, it's kind of silly, and it's a little, weird, but it's fine. And, if you get to 12 wins, if you're undefeated, well, then you get to play for the national championship, or for the Rose Bowl, or for the Cotton Bowl, or the Sugar Bowl, or any of these bowls. They used to mean something, and now they don't mean jack squat. Even if you win in the playoffs, they don't mean anything. Do you think Michigan cared that they won the Rose Bowl this year? Do you think if they would have lost in the national championship, they would have been happy? Hey, we still won the Rose Bowl. I don't think they would have been happy. They would, think of it that way, okay? If you would have told Michigan 10 years ago, you are going to win the Rose Bowl, and that will not, and you would not be happy about it necessarily. They would look at you like you're crazy. Like, that's the level that we've gotten to in college football, where in just the span of 10 years, which you might say is a long time, it really isn't a long time, we've gone from bowl games being incredibly meaningful to the point where that's the last major achievement of Michigan State in their football team, is winning the Rose Bowl in 2014, to where now, as a Michigan State fan myself, I don't want anything short of a national championship. And that's for better or for worse. That's just what it is. So college football is just going to keep changing, and I'm not a huge fan of most of these changes. Like I said, I like the in-helmet communication stuff, but it's clearly not motivated by a love of the game and focus on the things that made the game the way that it is, and is more just in trying to make it the NFL on Saturday. So if you like the NFL on Saturday, I guess more power to you, but I'm not a huge fan. All right. Let's move along. Let's do MSU basketball. Okay. So MSU basketball. 2 games left. Tomorrow is senior night at home against Northwestern. We do recall Northwestern slamming Michigan State in their home last game we played against them this past. I'm saying this really weirdly. Last time we played them at their home this season. That's what I'm trying to say. They beat us pretty bad. And Michigan State this past weekend, just the one game against Purdue on the road, whom they played close. Now, full disclosure, I did not watch the game. I was out, or I was unable to watch the game. But I saw that we played them close. I saw that the score was relatively close. The people who did watch the game said that the game was fairly close. And I believe ESPN still has us projected as a 9 seed. And I don't know if that changed from the last time. But it seems to me these next 2 games, they're must-wins. Like, for one, you have a home game, okay? That's a game you got to win. You haven't won at home in a very long time, okay? I think the last time you won at home was I'm trying to think. I actually don't remember when the last home win was. That's how long it's been. I don't remember. But you lose 2 home games that you really should have won against Iowa and Ohio State, both nationally televised. And then you got this game against Northwestern tomorrow night. And it's a team that's your favorite against. I believe the line was actually pretty crazy. It was 8.5 or something like that. I could be wrong. Let me double check that line. MSU Northwestern. Let's take a look if I can find. Let's see. 'Cause I like to do ESPN. Here we go. I mean, they're looking at a very high probability of Michigan State winning. It does not give me the money line. Maybe it does. Do I have to go to ESPN Bet? Let's see. I want to say it was 8.5. So maybe I'm wrong. Let's see. Line. Michigan, Northwestern. Now I'm just like, whatever. We'll just say it's 8.5. Okay, I can look into this all day. So we're just to move the show along. So this is a game you kind of have to win. All right, like if you're favored, and we just saw ESPN thinks you got an 80% shot to win this game. I know Northwestern has dealt with some injuries going into this, but they still have the bane of my existence, Boo Buie. I don't know how it feels like this guy has been in college for like half a century. He's been at Northwestern. I thought he was graduate. I thought we were done with him, but he's still there, and all he does is terrorize me. Since Boo Buie has gotten to Northwestern, all of a sudden Northwestern has our number. And that's a big problem because they've beaten us at their home. They've beaten us on the road. And right now we're looking incredibly vulnerable. We've lost 3 straight games, 2 of which we should have won. Both are at home. We have just this one last home game. And then to end the season, you got to go on the road to Indiana. And if you don't beat Northwestern, you have to win on the road against Indiana if you want to make the tournament. Because if you go out and you end the season 4 straight losses or 5 straight losses to teams that, frankly, outside of maybe Purdue, you should have been able to scrounge together at least a win. You're in a tough spot if you don't pull off that win, because teams are the committees, they might like give you a play-in spot, but that just adds one more game that you got to win to make a run in the tournament. Now, do I think this team is going to make a run in the tournament? Absolutely not. I mean, but that's not the here nor there. Like, you have set yourself up now because you didn't get the job done against Ohio State, because you didn't get the job against Iowa done, because you didn't beat Purdue. If you would have beaten Purdue, it would have been a lock. You were going to make the tournament. That was it. Full stop. But you didn't do it. You didn't win any of those games. Now you're in a spot. You got to win those games. You got to beat Northwestern. If you can beat Northwestern, you can beat Indiana, you're certainly in. If you could win at least one of those games, you're in. You're going to be a high seed. And high being the bad one, not like 1 seed. I don't know if that's is it low or high? That's a good question. Because low, the number 1 is lower than the number 16, but you understand my confusion. And then obviously you had the Big Ten tournament, and I suppose that still gives you some level of resume building. They will look at that if you go on a run in the Big Ten tournament. You give yourself that leeway, but you don't want to have to put that pressure on you. You don't want to have to force yourself to, in a neutral site, Big Ten tournament, where it's going to be anybody's game at that point. You don't want to force yourself into that situation where you have the one final game, senior night. Tyson Walker, AJ Hoggard, Madi Sissoko, Malik Hall, all these guys, these seniors, they need to have a game, right? They need to go out. They need to have their best game of the season. Like Tyson Walker, drop a 30 bomb or something. I don't know. Just go out and go out with a bang. You want to definitely secure your tournament spot. Now, I think you're probably going to make it one way or the other. But, crazy things have happened. And I don't know how long Tom Izzo is going to remain the coach, but this streak apparently seems to mean a lot. And I guess I would rather keep it than not. But I know eventually it's going to end at some point. So I guess I just want to delay the inevitable. But no, it's just, they're just not that good. And I said it after game one, and a lot of people didn't believe me at the time. People might have thought I was going a little too crazy, and well, I guess I just know my basketball team better than some. And not to be too smarmy about it, you would think, based on the way that our games are called on TV in national broadcast, or even on Big Ten Network, you would think we are like the greatest team ever. Like you would these Tom Izzo teams, they like to turn it on. We haven't turned it on at all. Okay, like there has never been a point where it was on. Exactly. Like we had some little mini win streaks there against, the most surprising win we've had all year for me was against Illinois at home. That was the most surprised I was. And outside of that, we've done nothing but disappoint. Like we've done nothing but find ways to lose games we should have won and win. And basically, we've only had that one game that we shouldn't have won that we won. And I guess the Baylor game. That was another game where I was genuinely shocked. But that just please, can you just beat Northwestern and Indiana? Is that really asking that much, Tom? Just figure it out. Please. I can't. I only have so much strength. But moving along to the NHL. So things have gotten a little rough for the Wings. Okay. So first they dropped 2 in a row this past week. They lose to the Islanders on Leap Day, which I was not a fan of because the Islanders are just an objectively worse team than the Red Wings. And then on Saturday, they lay a goose egg. They get blown out to the Florida Panthers 4-0. And they've had a little bit of a break at this point, but unfortunately, that was just the easier part, okay? Because I can pull up their schedule here. I saw a schedule and I thought, okay. I can pull up their schedule here. Things don't get much easier as we enter into this second to last, technically, month of the season. We got Colorado tomorrow night, 9:30 on the road. Then Friday, you're still on the road against Arizona with a back-to-back against Vegas Saturday night. Then you go back on the road that Tuesday against Buffalo. So looking at that road stretch, I mean, again, if you can win 2 out of those 4, if you could beat Arizona, you could beat Buffalo. That's a good feeling. Then you get a little bit of, it's very front loaded. And then middle is kind of you can make it work. Where after that Vegas game, you got Buffalo on the road, Arizona at home, Buffalo at home, Pittsburgh at home, Pittsburgh on the road, I should say. Columbus at home, Islanders at home, Nashville on the road, Washington on the road, Carolina on the road, and Florida on the road. That middle stretch, that middle kind of home stretch from the 12th of March to about the 21st, that's where you can really string together some of those wins and really secure that playoff spot. But you look at this stretch, And the problem is that for the next 2 weeks, I think starting this week, you're going to be out your captain. Dylan Larkin goes down in that Florida Panthers game. Looking at here from ESPN, the center left Saturday's 4-0 loss to the Florida Panthers after receiving a minor penalty for unsportsmanlike conduct in the third period. Larkin, 27, leads the Wings in goals and points through 55 games of the season. He leads the team's forwards in ice time per game, and apparently he will miss the next 2 weeks due to a lower body injury, whatever that means. Hockey's really weird with their injuries. They don't really give you a lot of detail as to what the injury is. It's lower body. Did he break his leg? Did he sprain his ankle? Does he have a contusion? That doesn't tell me. And meanwhile, with baseball, it's like the exact opposite. It's like you'll find out somebody has an ingrown hair or something oh yeah, Alex Faedo can't pitch for the Tigers tonight. He stubbed his toe walking out of the door of his house. Then he tripped, scraped his right elbow on the steps of his porch after subsequently grabbing a piece of poison ivy. It's like, that was not necessary, but you told me that. So I'm glad that I have that information now. But no Dylan Larkin, and we remember that stretch the Red Wings went on in the month of December when Dylan Larkin went down. So this is January. It's like, wait, this is not December. So January, so you lose Dylan Larkin in that Ottawa game, December the 9th. I don't remember when he came back, but this was the stretch they went on in the month of December. Lost to the Stars, beat the St. Louis Blues, lost to the Canes, lost to the Flyers, lost to the Ducks, lost to the Jets, win in shootout to the Flyers. I think by that point, Kane had come back. Or maybe Perron had come back. I don't actually remember. Or Kane. Did I say Kane? I meant Larkin. Lost to the Devils, lost to the Wild, win in overtime against the Preds, and then a loss to the Bruins on New Year's Eve. I want to say Dylan Larkin was out. He was certainly out for at least those couple of weeks. I think he played that Flyers game. I don't remember. But either way, you look at that stretch, right now, let me actually take a look at the standings because the Red Wings haven't played in a while, so I don't really know where they stand right now. So right now, they're actually tied for that top wildcard spot with Tampa Bay, who granted has played a couple more games than them. But they both have 72 points. The next closest team is the Islanders with 66. That's 66. That's a 3-game swing, right? Assuming you don't win any games and the Islanders win all 3, they'll be tied up with you, right? Do I think the Islanders are going to be able to do that? I don't know. But the point is, it's not secure, right? The Red Wings, for as good as they have been this year, certainly aren't the best team in the National Hockey League. I mean, we went down last week about some of the high levels they've been playing at, and they have been a really good power play team, a really good special teams team. They're one of the highest goal scoring teams, but a lot of that is predicated on the fact that Dylan Larkin is on the ice. So you lose Dylan Larkin, and we just talked about their schedule. It's not exactly a walk in the park, right? They're gonna have to deal with a tough stretch here. And assuming you get Dylan Larkin back, I don't know, against Pittsburgh. I mean, you can probably string together the wins there, but you're gonna be playing more games on the road at that point. So, look, it's kind of worst case scenario right now, but we do still have the trade deadline coming up in a couple of days here. I don't know if Steve Yzerman is going to make a move. He typically is. He's been pretty active in the trade deadline in the past few years. I mean, last year, trading off a lot of pieces, trading off Bertuzzi, trading off. Why am I blanking on the guy's name? Verona. He traded. I think he traded him. No, he didn't trade him. He couldn't trade him. That's right. Hronek, Philip Hronek. He's been active in trade deadline, and the question is whether or not he's going to be active in the opposite end. Is he going to be a buyer? Is he going to use assets that we have that he's built up through the draft, through these trades? He's going to use those assets to add a player. And I think if he wants to make the playoffs, if he wants to secure that playoff spot, it would behoove him, especially given this Dylan Larkin injury, it would behoove him as a general manager to help out his team and make a move. I don't know what that move is. All right. I'm not a hockey expert. All right. I don't know who is even available necessarily. I'm just saying, if we stand pat, I might feel a little unease. Okay. I might not feel great about it. But then again, Steve Yzerman has gotten us to this point. I really have no reason to believe that he's, just going to leave us in the dark. So hopefully they figure it out. But it's going to be a rough stretch. And I think things might look bad as we enter this week here with Colorado, Arizona, and Vegas all on the road, all teams that are either in the playoffs or, in the case of Arizona, fighting for a playoff spot. I think they're still fighting for a playoff spot. I'm double checking that. I think they're still kind of in it. No, they're not. Okay, never mind. I thought they were doing. You know what? All right. You know what? We're just gonna where's a good drop for that? You know what? Here we go.
Ow! Ow!
That's what I deserve. That was wow. I thought they were doing a lot better than they were doing. No, they are very much out of the wild card and will likely be selling at the trade deadline. So maybe you could get a piece out of them before you had to play them. But finally, before we wrap up the show, we have a myriad of pieces of news. We have 2 guys that are leaving, or 2 guys that are more settled, I should say. And well, actually, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5 different players that I thought were newsworthy. Okay. We're going to start with Mike Evans very briefly because we talked about him on the show. I had the clip put up about landing spots for Mike Evans. And Mike Evans is staying with the Bucks. Now, I said in that video that the Bucks would be stupid to let a guy like him walk, and they are not stupid. Mike Evans agrees to a 2-year, $52 million deal with $35 million guaranteed. So, more than likely final contract of his career. He's one of the greats. I personally love watching Mike Evans. Obviously won the Super Bowl in 2020 with Brady. He's one of the great wide receivers in Tampa Bay history. And he just seems like he's just a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. To see him play for any other team to me would be strange. So they're going to keep him for the remainder of his career, most likely. I doubt he's going to get signed after 2 years. Going into 2026, I don't know that Mike Evans is really going to be that kind of player. But it's good. I mean, he helped win them a Super Bowl. He helped win them the division championship this year. Division championship, division title. It's a championship. And yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good that he's staying with the Bucks. I don't know if it's going to work necessarily for the Bucks' favor because obviously receivers, they can age quickly. They lose that speed. They lose that elevation, so to speak, that ability to jump and make those catches. But Mike Evans he's one of the great ones. So they're making the right decision. Speaking of making the right decision, Broncos country has ridden off of Mr. Russell Wilson. They have cut Russell Wilson once the league year begins, which I think is around when free agency begins, technically. Here's a statement from GM George Patton, not Payton. Sean Payton is the coach. So here is their statement, official Broncos Twitter, and I quote, "Spoke with Russell Wilson today to inform him of his release after the start of the league year. On behalf of the Broncos, we thank Russell for his contributions and dedication to our team and community while wishing him the best as he continues his career. As we move forward, we are focused on building the strongest team possible for the 2024 season and beyond. We are excited to improve this offseason, and will have the flexibility to get through the draft and free agency." Now, they will be paying $85 million in dead cap. So they're paying $85 million. Russell Wilson is making $85 million to not play. Essentially, that's the cost of this cut. And I know that they say this stuff about, we really appreciate all of his country. Oh, look, okay. I don't think any Broncos fan outside of, I don't know, maybe Brandon Perna. Shout out Brandon Perna. I love his content. I think he's a very interesting figure in the football world. And I think he offers a unique perspective. Anyways, outside of like that kind of diehard Broncos fan, and honestly, I don't want to speak for Perna, but I don't know that anybody really likes his contributions to the Broncos because it was just more of the same, right? The Broncos, since winning their Super Bowl in 2015, have been a laughing stock. Not kind of in the middle, not a fairly competent team. Maybe they make the play. No, they haven't made the playoffs. Okay, they haven't done anything. They have missed on quarterback after quarterback after quarterback after quarterback. I feel like I think I still got more quarterbacks. It's like Joe Flacco, Teddy Bridgewater, Paxton Lynch, Drew Lock, all these guys, and now Russell Wilson. It's like, I know it's not to that point just yet, but it is possible that it gets to the point where the Broncos are the Browns jersey. And I'm not, again, that is several decades in the making. We haven't even reached a decade since they won that Super Bowl. But they have really missed on quarterbacks historically. They had what's his name? Elway, but they traded for Elway. They didn't draft Elway. He was drafted by the Colts, I believe. And then he was like, no. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess we'll trade you. I wonder, does that sort of thing happen now? I guess it's not unprecedented, obviously. It's happened as recently as Eli Manning doing it to the Chargers. But it's so strange to me. I've never seen it happen. But anyway, the Broncos Russell Wilson situation, I can only, as a Detroit sports fan, I can comp it to just one. I guess this would be the comp, is Javi Baez. Okay? I know everybody's not a baseball fan. Bear with me. Javi Baez was in a pretty hot shortstop class in 2021, free agency wise. You had guys like Javi Baez, Trevor Story, Marcus Semien. I believe Corey Seager was also in that class. You had a lot of big names in that class of shortstop / second baseman. And Tigers didn't get Carlos Correa. They didn't get Trevor Story. They settled for Javi Baez. Now, Javi Baez, to his career, was always a pretty solid player. He was always an above-average hitter. Seemed to have some pop in his bat. A great fielder. He had won the Gold Glove just a few seasons ago. He received some MVP votes a few years back. He's a former All-Star, World Series champion with the Chicago Cubs. Javi Baez had the resume where you're like, yeah, okay. I mean, he certainly has to be an improvement over, who we had at the time at shortstop, which was Nico Goodrum. He certainly got to be better than Nico Goodrum. And I think a lot of Broncos fans looked at their quarterback situation. Well, Russell Wilson, he's been a pretty good quarterback. He's not amazing. A lot of them wanted to go trade for Aaron Rodgers, who ended up just staying with the Packers for at least another season. But that was the big name, was to go trade for Aaron Rodgers. As opposed to having to trade for Russell Wilson. And they don't trade for Aaron Rodgers. They do trade for Russell Wilson. And it's in the same way that Javi Baez was a complete disaster from the start and immediately lost all of his reputation. Any goodwill he might have gained from being on the Chicago Cubs and being a World Series champion, all that was lost when he started playing for the Tigers. In the same way that any good reputation Russell Wilson had playing for the Seahawks, winning a Super Bowl, nearly going back-to-back, all of that was destroyed. The very moment he lost, the very moment that whole thing started. And I hear statements like this, and I know it's just PR. I know it's just it's polite. It's what they should do. They should be respectful to Russell Wilson because he's not somebody worth disrespecting. For one, he's not a disrespectful person. In fact, he seems to me from the outside, he seems to be a very good person, a very genuine person, a very charitable person. And, barring his kind of weird awkwardness and a little bit of dorkiness, he doesn't really seem like a malicious guy. But I don't know. I don't know him personally. Maybe he is a malicious guy. But as a player, he set you back. I mean, he helped the Seahawks essentially restart a little bit where they make the playoffs, a couple of years ago. They don't go very far, but it showed that Russell Wilson, there was a reason that he didn't get drafted in the first round. There was a reason that, he was not, seen as an MVP candidate to the voters. He never received an MVP vote. And I'm not saying he is the weirdest figure for me, because if you were to say at the end of his Seattle tenure, is Russell Wilson a Hall of Fame? You probably would lean more so towards yes, right? I mean, I can just pull up his numbers real quick. Okay. In his career, here we go. He's a 9-time Pro Bowler, Super Bowl champion. Obviously, he was never an All-Pro guy, but received votes for Rookie of the Year, Player of the Year. He was consistent multiple times. He led the league in quarterback rating in 2015, led the league in touchdowns in 2017. Obviously, he had the playoff run in 2013, won the Super Bowl. I mean, he was in the playoffs basically every single year, right? Even when he didn't make the playoffs in 2017, he was still a really good quarterback, right? And the thing about him was, he would take some sacks, okay? He would usually get sacked in the 30 to 40 range, right? He gets to Denver, and he gets sacked 50 times, highest in his career, and a league leader, and he leads the league in sacks and yards lost. It is night and day. If you just look at his Seattle numbers, though, you're like, yeah, of course this guy's pretty much like a Hall of Famer. I mean, all those Pro Bowls, all those years of being seen as a dominant quarterback, it's hard to not view him as such. But I don't know. At this point, it's are the Pro Bowls all that impressive? I mean, Pro Bowls aren't all pros, right? He was never voted an All-Pro. He was never voted an MVP. And obviously, we just thought he never got an MVP vote. He got a couple of years where he was Offensive Player of the Year. He got votes for Offensive Player of the Year, but that's usually just that award is usually reserved for non-quarterbacks. So I don't know. Just the more that I have to think about it, and I don't know if he's going to play further. It's like I've never seen a guy play himself out of the Hall of Fame quite like Russell Wilson. And again, I don't know that he is going to be out of the Hall of Fame, but it's not looking good. It's not looking great, because it seems more and more clear that he was a product of the team around him. And not that he didn't make good plays, not that he wasn't good, but he leaves that situation in Seattle where he was sitting pretty for the most part. But just one losing season with Seattle and back-to-back losing seasons with Denver. Now, to be fair, he's had 3 in a row losing seasons. And again, those aren't wins and losses aren't QB stats. So keep that in mind. But moving along to the next player I want to talk about very briefly. Emmanuel Moseley is a Lion once again. He signs a 1-year deal with Detroit to bring him back so that he avoids free agency. Obviously, Emmanuel Moseley tore his ACL early in the season. He was recovering from another ACL injury. I was a little shocked by this, because it seemed to me, you tear one ACL, okay, yeah, we can give you a prove-it deal. Tear the other one. I mean, I don't know. They must really like his presence in the locker room. I don't know if he will be ready week 1. I mean, he tore it relatively early, but it's hard to come back from an ACL. Obviously, it took him until week 5 to come back from the ACL tear he had before. So hopefully he can be ready early. I actually don't know when he tore his ACL the year prior. Let me pull it up. I can probably just look at how many games he played. I know that the moment that he stopped playing games, that was when he tore his ACL. Yeah. So I mean, okay. So he tore it around the same time. I mean, like he played in 11 games in 21, but in 22 he played in 5 games. Week 5, yeah, it must have been the same thing. Week 5, he tore his ACL. So we're looking at basically another situation where he's not going to be there for a year, or not. And he's not going to be there week 1 necessarily. Maybe he will. I don't know, but it's. I was a little shocked by this, and I hope that this is not the Lions' way of saying, "Look, we addressed the secondary. We re-signed Emmanuel Mosley." It's like, well, Emmanuel Mosley's not going to be playing, so we'll see once free agency gets started. I don't think this is going to be necessarily their way of addressing the defense or the secondary in general. I think they're more than likely going to be making some moves, and those moves will hopefully make the team better. That's a hope at any point. But I was a little shocked to see Emmanuel Mosley come back, especially just because he didn't give me anything, obviously, because his leg fell off. But I don't know. I guess they really liked his presence in the locker room or something. Okay. I'll trust Brad Holmes' judgment on this, and hopefully he comes back. He can be a really solid contributor to the defense. Moving on. So we're gonna have a couple of players here, and I don't know who I want to more focus on. You know what? We'll talk about Saquon. Okay, Saquon is gonna be a free agent. Giants are not tagging Saquon Barkley. 2-time Pro Bowler will hit free agency for the first time in his career. And yeah, a lot of teams are going to be interested in Saquon Barkley. That's for sure. Let me pull up Tankathon, just because it's a good way to measure where teams are at in the standings, relatively. Question is, what kind of a team is going to want, number one, and I don't know every team's salary cap situation, so bear with me. What team could use an addition like Saquon as far as the run game goes, and which team can afford him? Well, for one, I'm going to throw out the Lions are not going to be interested in Saquon for obvious reasons. We have Gibbs and we have Montgomery. That's not going to happen. But I think of I want to give like some teams that maybe you don't expect. I know Jim Harbaugh had coached against Saquon back when he was at Penn State. And I don't know what the Austin Eckler situation is in LA. But even if they do bring Eckler back, I don't see why Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers, assuming they can afford it. I don't know how much Saquon is going to be asking for, but could the Chargers be a team to look out for in the Saquon sweepstakes? That might be hard to say. Try saying Saquon sweep. I can't even say it one time. Try saying Saquon sweepstakes 5 times really fast. You may die. Like, actually. But no, I mean, honestly, I'm not even just saying that. Like, I do think if they don't keep Austin Eckler, I think certainly Saquon Barkley could be on the table. We know that Jim Harbaugh likes to run the ball. We saw it at Michigan. And to have an elite running back like Saquon, who, granted, has had his injury troubles in the past, I do think it could work. It's a big name. It's a big market. I'm sure Saquon would appreciate it. And other teams that maybe could be in the market for it. This is kind of interesting. I thought about it earlier today, and I'm not sure how I would feel about it. What about the Jets? Okay, so the Jets, I don't know what their cap situation is. I'm just throwing out teams that I think it might work. They might not be able to afford him. If they can't, let me know. Obviously, they have Breece Hall, but last year they were running it with Dalvin Cook, and I don't even know who their other running back is. If you have a two-headed monster of Breece Hall, a rookie who is probably not getting paid all that much because he was I think he was a 2nd-round pick, or maybe a 3rd-round pick. So you're probably not paying him that much. And you add Saquon, he's already familiar with playing in MetLife. I don't know. I mean, like, it could work. Like, I could see it. Outside of that, how about the Bears? How about Chicago? I mean, they had what's his name? I'm blanking on the guy's name. It wasn't Sony Michel. That's the Patriots. I don't remember who they had. They had somebody at running back. They had a human being at running back. Last I checked. But I guess that sort of advocates for what I'm saying. Like the Bears are going to have a lot of money to spend, and certainly I think they would be willing to add a threat in the backfield like Saquon. And as much as I would hate to see that, because I think Saquon's a good player, and I don't want to have to play Saquon twice a year, I think it's possible. And the other one that I thought about was the Titans. So the Titans probably moving on from Derrick Henry, and because the Titans are not a very smart organization, moving on from Derrick Henry to bring in Saquon would be an interesting move because you're basically just like you could have just kept it. All right, fine, do whatever you want. But I don't know. Maybe it works out actually. Saquon's slightly younger than Derrick Henry, I believe. Yeah, they're slightly younger. Yeah, because he was drafted like a few years ago. So, yeah, he's definitely younger. Watch him like not be that much younger. But I mean, they're kind of in a sort of rebuild, retool mode. They don't. I mean, is Will Levis their guy? I think they kind of think that. Like, I don't know what they think at quarterback. Because if they think Ryan Tannehill's is still their guy, I pray for them if that's what they're thinking. But there's a lot of really interesting landing spots for Saquon. I'd be interested once the reports come out in free agency if he's not just signed immediately. I'd be interested to hear what teams are in the running for him because I think you're going to see teams like the Chargers. I think the Bears, honestly, I think that could be a team I know for sure they have the money and they definitely could improve themselves in the run game for sure. I mean, I'm just looking at the list here. There's a lot of options for run game improve. I mean, hey, what about the Texans? I mean, like they had what's his name? Singletary. They had Devin Singletary, who is okay. He was fine. He was good for me in fantasy. But a little too inconsistent. Could they make that move? I mean, I think they could certainly, if they want to upgrade their offense, I think Saquon to the Texans certainly could be a fit. But either way, another one, and obviously they're always in the mix for these sorts of things. I feel like the Cowboys got to be in the mix for this, right? I mean, Saquon, taken from a division rival. Jerry loves his celebrities and big name players because, he doesn't know how to build a proper football team and can't win in the postseason because he's a terrible owner and he doesn't know anything about football. Anyways, I think it could be a team that would go after him. So a lot of landing spots for Saquon, and I think the Giants are right to move on from him, though. I really don't think they had much of a future with him, and I think they're getting to the point where they're really going to initiate this rebuild. Because last year, the year was totally a wash. Jones gets hurt. He plays terribly. Nothing goes well for them, essentially. So I think at this point, moving on from Saquon, apparently they're experiencing buyer's remorse for Daniel Jones. I just it's not a good time to be a New York Giants fan. We'll just say that. I think they probably should be looking towards, frankly, if they really feel strongly, maybe they should be looking towards quarterback this draft. Maybe trade up with. I don't know if any of these teams in the top three are willing to trade away their picks because it's probably the Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels show. I don't know. You'd have to give up a fortune, and you'd have to really believe in one of those guys to be it. But either way, the other player that I wanted to talk about was one Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley, according to Cameron Wolf, is that he is going to be trending towards free agency since the Jaguars are going to plan on franchise tagging Josh Allen, not the quarterback. So with Calvin Ridley, he seems to me to be one of those guys that's a big name that never delivers, like ever. Like every year. So, like he was on the Falcons where he was just not getting utilized, and obviously he had suspension, and then he goes to the Jaguars, and it's like, oh, here we go. Calvin Ridley is going to help activate that offense. He's going to help Trevor Lawrence develop into the league, and he just doesn't do anything. Like I can pull up his stats. His stats probably look good. But anybody who pays attention and follows the league, it's like it just feels like empty numbers. Like it's like, oh, you had 1,000 yards receiving. Great. I mean, whatever. Like, the suspension last year or injury, the year before that, like it's just guy can't stay on the field, and availability is the most important ability. And I don't know. I would not be interested. Now, for one, I don't want the Lions to be interested in any wide receiver. I think our wide receiver room is basically full. The only wide receiver I'd want them, if they're going to spend on a wide receiver, it's got to be like a third option. And hey, if they can get Calvin Ridley for like, very small cash, and he's just basically your Josh Reynolds, maybe. But at that point, I would just draft a wide receiver. Like, just draft a wide receiver late, or draft a wide receiver in one of the later rounds. Maybe Antoine Green, who you drafted in the 7th round last year. Maybe he develops into something. Since now he might have something of a roster spot to gain. But either way, or you just bring out Josh Reynolds. I wouldn't mind either way. Like, our wide receiver room is fine. Anyways, as far as teams that would be interested in a wide receiver, the big name for me, the one that came up immediately as soon as I saw, was the Chiefs. I mean, for one, the Chiefs just won the Super Bowl. So as far as they're concerned, it's high risk, or low risk, high reward. Like whatever. If they sign him and he stinks and he's not good, whatever. They just won a Super Bowl. There's not a huge amount of pressure on the Chiefs to go out and win something immediately again. Maybe Chiefs fans will feel differently, but as far as I'm concerned, as a non-Chiefs fan, you can take a little bit of risk, right? Like, you can be like, you know what? Yeah, we'll give Calvin Ridley a shot. Maybe we can figure something out with him. Obviously, he had something going for him in Atlanta in the late 2010s, and then injury, suspension, stuff like that. Things just didn't work out. And then obviously they're not working out in Jacksonville. Maybe you come in and it's a resurgence. It's a Marquez Valdez-Scantling situation, right? It's an MVS situation. But other teams potentially that could be interested, maybe the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, they're probably going to be interested in upgrading that offense, getting a wide receiver. Calvin Ridley, a vet of this league, certainly can't hurt, right? I mean, the Jags already stole Christian Kirk from them. Maybe go ahead and steal Calvin Ridley from them. I don't know. Maybe a team like the Raiders. I don't know. There's a lot of options with a big name receiver like him. But Calvin Ridley, again, I talked about it with Taquan. He feels like he could be a Cowboy. I mean, like, I don't want to be like, because one of the things this is slightly unrelated. I don't like when in baseball, anytime a free agent is available, everyone's like, oh, well, the Dodgers are interested. It's like, well, yeah, they spend $1 gazillion every year. The Cowboys are similar, where it's like every time there's a free agent, oh, well, maybe the Cowboys are interested. It's like, well, yeah, their owner is insane. Like, of course they're interested. It doesn't matter who they are. But could they actually bite the bullet a little bit on Calvin Ridley? And again, it's low risk, high reward. Because if Calvin Ridley is the player that he was in, let's just say 2020, where he was, second team All-Pro and 1,300 yards and, 9 touchdowns, 65 first downs, 91 yards per game. You're going to get yourself a solid wide receiver at that point, right? You're going to get yourself just an absolute dog. And I mean, I think he still has that potential. He's going to be entering his year 30 season, though. So, it's a risk, but some teams are going to be willing to take that risk. I do think that the Chiefs are probably going to be in the mix for this. I do. Other teams, I'm not so sure. Again, maybe you look at the Packers. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know if they're going to go after him. Maybe the Bills, if they don't, if Steph Diggs moves along, maybe they decide to grab wide receiver and Calvin Ridley. I don't know. I think there's probably more. I just really feel strongly the Chiefs are going to go after this guy. I really do. So every other team that I hear, it's like, I don't know. There's just something about it. It just seems like he's a Kansas City Chief. And maybe I'm going to eat my words, but it's just how I feel. It's just how it seems to me. But anyway. So that is where we're gonna wrap up the show. So that was a lot. We had to break down a lot of stuff. Yeah. So that is it for this week's show. A few general things that have been going through. Just sort of trying to as we get into this, obviously this post football territory. So when is the draft? I believe it's late April. So Thursday, the 25th of April. So that's over a month away. So as far as the draft goes, obviously, we'll talk about that when we get a little bit closer. But I want to. I'm still not totally set on this, but I'm thinking I might go live for opening day for the Tigers. That will be Thursday, the 28th. Okay, so the 28th of March is opening day for the Tigers. They play on the road against the Chicago White Sox. So I'm thinking I might want to go live for that. Just do at least that one game. And maybe we'll do. I've thought about this. Maybe we'll do like a weekly Tiger game. Just I don't know, maybe on a Saturday or a Friday night or something. We just go live for one of their games, or maybe on a weekday night. I don't know. Maybe we do that. I'm not totally sure, especially if the team ends up not being very good. I probably wouldn't be as willing to do that. But it's just sort of something in the works. Outside of that, we'll be trekking along here. I'm still not certain as to what my status will be for March Madness, for making a bracket or anything. Obviously, that's still a few weeks in the making here. So we'll wait until that. We'll wait and see for that to sort of formulate itself. But as it stands, I'd definitely be interested in doing like a live bracket. Just maybe even just do it myself. But I'd like to have like a group of people to do it with either way. So, but with that, that is going to be the end of the show. We will be back next week to break down all the news of the week, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of news. You got the NHL trade deadline on Friday. I believe free agency. When does free agency start? NFL free agency. March 13th. So that will be. So we'll go live the day before. So it won't start next show, but we'll probably have a better idea of who's going to remain a free agent, though, because at that point, everyone who will have been tagged will be tagged, stuff like that. Either way. So that's when things will really get started. But we still have the NHL trade deadline. The NBA is nearing the end. Well, I guess so is the NHL. It's right. They're both entering March. And then obviously March Madness. We'll have the final regular season college basketball. We wrapped up for Michigan State. We'll be able to break down that whole season where they were good and bad and mostly bad. But with that, we'll break it down next week. It should be a good time. So I appreciate anyone for stopping by, hanging out. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Spread the show, spread the word. If you like sports, spread it to your friends who like sports as well. It's a good time. We hang out on Tuesday nights. Come on, it's a good time. With that, though, we're going to wrap up the show and hope to see you guys next week for all the sporting news of the week. Have a good night, everybody, and take care. Bye.